Hey y'all, welcome to Sipping Tea with Sabrina. In just a second, we'll be sharing the tea on the five signs you might that sorry, five signs you might be leading a toxic organization. I'm sure I had those signs before, so I'm so excited for this conversation. But if we've never met before, I'm Sabrina, the Dream Team Architect and President and CEO of Building Better Boards. I specialize in building elite leadership teams for corporate and nonprofit boards and CEOs, turning high level potential into extraordinary performance. And if you're looking to transform your board or need support working with your board or team, you've come to the right place. Again, I'm Sabrina Walker Hernandez, facilitator for corporate and nonprofit organizations, international keynote speaker, and your go to expert in strategic leadership and governance excellence. I've helped drive over $36 million in revenue. 14 million of that was in the third poorest county in the United States while building organizational resilience. And I'm here to share the insights and strategies that can make a real difference for you and your organization. Let's get started. So, we have with us today, we have a very special guest that I'm excited to bring to the stage. And we have with us today Kim Stewart. Welcome to the stage, Kim. I'm so excited to have you here. And I want people to get a chance to get to know you because this conversation is critical to those wanting to understand the five signs you might be leading a toxic organization. Whether you are a nonprofit, a mission driven company, or an association, that is why we have Kim with us today. So, Kim, share a little bit about yourself and your experience.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. And hello, everyone. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. So, my background is in nonprofit, and that's what I work with almost exclusively. For about 30 some years, I worked for YMCAs throughout the Midwest and in Colorado. And
Was it okay? Sorry.
about 5 years ago, I left that work and started my own consulting firm, Athena Coaching and Consulting. And now I work with nonprofit organizations to do work very similar to Sabrina's. I help them curate really healthy boards of directors so that they can lead healthy, strong organizations and do the important work of making our world a better place. I work mostly with smaller, younger nonprofit organizations to figure out this part of leading a nonprofit because nobody's born knowing how to do this, and that just really fills my cup, and that's the work that I love to do.
Sorry, it is a habit of mine. Anytime anybody says the why, I shout out Boys and Girls Club.
Also a great organization.
Both are great organizations. Both do great work in line with youth development in my heart. And so I always have to do that shout out. So I have a couple of questions here for you, Kim, and I want to get started because this is such a critical conversation, especially like you said, for those newer organizations. Sometimes just building a team, whether that team is a board or a staff team. And so I have several questions here. And one of the ones that I think will kick us off well is that toxic leadership can sometimes go unnoticed by those in charge, particularly if you're in the work. But what are the subtle signs leaders should watch out for in their organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, there's this underlying tension, like the before the meeting, maybe nobody's talking, maybe there's people who intentionally sit apart from one another. Maybe there's side conversations that stop right away when certain people enter the room. I think that sort of tension, like we're not here relaxed having fun. That's a really good sign. I think staff and board members alike, when there's a high level of turnover, that's usually a sign, especially when their reasons for leaving are vague or there are no reasons, or even that quiet quitting thing where
Mhm.
stop responding to emails, they stop coming to board meetings, they don't respond to requests for a one-on-one, those kinds of things. And then I think if board meetings are largely a sit and get, where there's no engaging conversation. And when there is, it's really forced. You have to pull, it's like pulling teeth to get anybody to contribute anything. I think that's a really big sign that there's something under the surface that is keeping people from feeling like it's a safe place to contribute or like their contributions are going to be valued or heard or honored. So those are just a few of the things that I have seen. And, these are similar between board members and staff members, really.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you see that connection, and I wish that other people could see that connection. Like these staff and board, these are the teams that you're working with, and I'm sitting here nodding my head because yes, I've sat in meetings, staff meetings where tension was in the room. I didn't want to be there. I remember, and I'll share this with you really quick. I remember the staff meetings that I led when I was CEO. They were very, we got to get things done. And I remember just looking around the room and just people like the dread in their eyes, right?
Mhm.
And that feeling. And so one of the things that I did was we started our meetings off after that with like a team building activity, but not just um, a random building activity. It was one that was designed to increase endorphins, right? And
Yeah.
make it feel better and build that team spirit
Yeah.
for the
That is
staff
so
team.
valuable.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I've been to a lot of board meetings where they don't do that. It's not even like there's an official start. They just start talking about things and there's no segue from what they were doing before to, oh, now we're this team and we need to do work for this together.
yep,
And I think people think it's frivolous sometimes, but it brings so much to the table in terms of it gets everybody to talk at least once, right?
yep,
It starts to build those relationships. It starts
yep,
to see the people that you're working with as real people, not adversaries or
yep,
whatever, Yeah, it's super valuable. And I've even sometimes, you do have a lot of work to get to and you have to put a timer. You know what? I'm going
yes,
to give everybody 30 seconds to share the best thing happening in their private personal life.
yep,
Go. And
yeah.
then you time them.
Yeah, yeah, you just gotta have a timer, have an agenda, and have a timer. So, in your experience, what is the most common cause of toxicity in nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, great question. Well, I don't believe that anybody sets out and wants to create a toxic environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But especially all work is hard, but nonprofit work is especially hard. And, when you have so many balls in the air that you're juggling, some of the less tangible components of leadership can slip through the cracks, right? It takes real intentionality to create and to pay attention to healthy and thoughtful communication. So, in the rush of managing all of these things, all of the tasks that need to get done, communication can easily just become this one-way street where I have a million things to tell you. I'm going to download it,
Yep.
and when that happens, people don't feel included or like their insights matter. They start to shut down. Real conversations cease to exist, and a lack of healthy communication is really a breeding ground for toxic cultures to flourish. And again, same with staff as with board members. If they're not engaged, they're not going to stick around. They won't contribute to the advancement of your cause. And sometimes they even form a resistance, right?
Yeah, it's I've seen it happen. And I have been that person and I've had to intentionally slow down and learn best practices like you're saying. So one of the things that was challenging for me was fostering open communication. So how can nonprofit leaders foster open communication to uncover hidden issues within their teams?
Yeah, oh, that's such a great question. Thank you for asking that. I think any real communication starts with a commitment to listening. if the leader just wants to hear themselves talk, genuine relationships and genuine conversations really are not going to be possible. And so, that sounds like a simple thing to change. It actually takes practice and discipline to be a good listener and do it consistently. So it requires the leader to go into the conversation with curiosity and with a desire to understand the other person's point of view. There's a really good book by Michael Bungay Stainer called The Coaching Habit.
Mm.
And he has 7 questions that he shares. And they're not the best questions in the world, but they're a really good starting place for shifting to a listening conversation mindset. And so the questions focus on holding the other person in your attention and really listening to what their thoughts are, their passions. They are things like, what do you want to have happen in this situation? How can we make this happen? What's under our control? What are your thoughts? What are you thinking? What do you think the real challenge is? Just really digging down or drilling down on the issues until there's nothing else left to say. And his last question is, what else? And I love that question, because just when you think you've beat that dead horse as much as you can, it's like, is there anything else that you want to share on this topic? And again, simple. Listening is simple. Everybody can do it. We're just not all necessarily practiced at doing it. And to practice listening, I think sometimes seems like it'd be like practicing breathing, which can also seem like a weird thing, yet really valuable, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I knew I was not a good active listener. I was always listening to respond, and it's something that I had to work on really hard, because I did the Strength Finders assessment, and I'm an activator. So I don't celebrate, and I'm listening, but I'm in my head, I'm multitasking, which we know you cannot multitask, right?
Right.
There's no such thing. But there's those out there that are like me. And like you said, if you can give the name of that book one more time, because I'm an avid believer in, if you know you have this problem, you got to work on it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's called The Coaching Habit, and the author is Michael Bungay Stainer.
Perfect. Thank you. And
Yeah.
so if okay, like I said, it was a challenge for me, and sometimes I did have to rebuild trust. But what are some strategies that leaders can use to rebuild trust after addressing toxic behaviors or practices?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when it comes to rebuilding trust on a board, I think that the leaders need to approach it both from the individual standpoint
Mhm,
and the group standpoint.
mhm.
I think they also both the board chair and the exec or CEO need to be pretty vulnerable and be able to listen to and process what is going wrong with the culture. The leaders need to admit that things aren't going well, and that they're part of they've created this, right? And or maybe they inherited it, but they still need to say, what, I haven't been able to fix this. Here's where we are. And it can be a really great experience both for the leaders and their personal growth, as well as obviously the well-being of the organization that they want to work on improving. And so I think starting with one-on-one conversations with each and every board member, asking a lot of questions to understand what their experience has been like. And those questions from Michael's book can be a great place to start.
Mhm.
Spending time just to get to know these board members as people.
Yes.
Because when we have healthy relationships with people, they're going to be much more supportive to jump on board and to support the work that you're doing to rebuild a broken culture into something healthy. And then at the group level, you have to have some open conversations about where things are, while not, getting too bogged down in it. You don't want it to be just a gripe fest and woe is us. You want to acknowledge where we've been, what we haven't liked, and then start to create that vision for what a healthy culture is going to look like. So it's gathering input, talking about what kind of group dynamics make sense for this board, and then developing a plan to make changes and get there. And I don't think people need to do everything all at once, right? Because this
Right.
toxic culture didn't like just evolve overnight. It came over time. And so it's going to take time to kind of unwind that and rebuild it into a healthy place where people want to be to do good work together.
Right. And you're bridging the gap between staff and board. It's very interesting because I have a client that she currently has some staff turnover, and the board noticed, right?
Mhm.
And she's having a little conflict with the board too. And it's hard to get people to acknowledge their role in that toxic environment. So, like you said, changing it overnight is not going to happen. But
Mhm.
I'm going to throw this question at you. When you are dealing with someone or a situation like that, where the staff sees it, the board sees it, but the person who is actively involved in the toxicity doesn't see it, right? And so the staff leaves, and then you have board members leave, and that person says, "Oh, I'm so glad they left. Like they weren't fit for this organization."
Yeah.
What conversations do you have then?
So the challenge you're describing is with the CEO or the executive
Yes,
director.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah. And anytime you can, you want to preserve that person if they're a good fit for the organization, but maybe have some leadership opportunities for growth, right? And I think, with any performance improvement plan or conflict resolution, again, it starts with listening. You have a listening conversation, asking them what they see that's going well, asking them see if what they see that's not going well, and if they're not seeing that, oh, there's a lot of turnover, we need to point this out, and then ask, well, what would you attribute that to? And you know sometimes we get defensive, right? And so this conversation goes better if we've already built those healthy relationships. We're When we have to have those conversations with someone and there's a healthy relationship and there's trust, that person's going to understand that we're coming from a space of love and caring about them being successful and caring about this organization. But when that relationship doesn't exist, there's that defensiveness, like, oh, they're just trying to get rid of me because I came down on them hard about not doing a project well or something like that. Um, and sometimes the leader's the problem and something needs to change, but
right,
you don't want that to be the first option.
right.
You want to work through it if you can.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And so I just want to acknowledge people if they're just joining us. Welcome to a broadcast, and we're currently talking about 5 signs you might be leading a toxic organization. And we've just covered some active listening, talking about listening, relationships. That's all I'm going to say because you need to go back and look at this at the top. And we talked about trust, and even shared a book and a resource that will help you with your listening. So, listening and relationships have been core to this conversation. So, you need to go back and listen. And so, with that in mind, moving on to our next discussion, because I kind of jumped ahead of myself, but
That's okay.
we're going to revisit one thing. But right now, we know that many nonprofits operate with limited resources. So, when you operate with limited resources, that can create stress. How can leaders prevent this stress from turning into toxicity?
Yeah, yeah. What a great question, right? Um, well, I think that a lot of nonprofit leaders, especially the staff leader, the exec or the CEO, believe that they have to carry the burden of success on their own shoulders. And when I was an exec, I felt that way at
Yep.
some point, like this is all on me. Yet this sector is literally designed to ensure that this important work is shared and carried by a team. The concept of the board of directors is intentionally designed to be part of the structure to make sure that nonprofits include community members in helping to solve these critical social issues, right?
Yes.
And a well curated and well educated board should be helping to grow resources, i.e., fundraise, and
Mm-hmm.
they should be helping to shoulder the burden of success. So, figuring out when finances are rough, what are we going to do? How are we going to diversify, or how are we going to look at this problem differently? It can be a lot of work to get to the point where you have this robust, dynamic board, but it's so worth it. Uh,
Yes.
it just,
Amen. I just want to throw in an amen.
yeah. Yeah. So, so many, especially younger nonprofits, they're like, I'm doing all this great work and I also have to build a board and manage them. And I get it. That does seem overwhelming. But when you do invest in that piece of the nonprofit leadership, it just can do so much to support the work that you're doing and bring value and more recognition and more awareness. And it's just so worth it.
It is so worth it. It is so necessary. And so let's give the folks, let's give them an example. So can you share a success story where organization transformed its culture after recognizing signs of toxicity?
Yeah. So I worked with an agency that had, and this was a pretty established agency, but it had gone through 5 executive directors in 6 years.
Wow.
So a
That's like
lot of turnover. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a lot, and each exec came in with different ideas about how to lead the board, brought in their people, people that they recruited, and they established different expectations, or they didn't establish any expectations at all. So the board was this hodgepodge of people who didn't know what they were supposed to be doing. They didn't have any connections to that current exec because they'd been brought on by iterations of previous execs.
Mhm.
And so there were just a ton of disengaged people who were not really doing anything to advance the cause or to support the organization. They were names on a piece of paper, really, sometimes
Mhm.
showing up to board meetings, but then it was just to sit and get. And
Mhm.
so the new exec brought me in, and there had been some toxic lingering issues in the past, but really the board had turned over so much. I don't think anybody was even familiar with what created these problems in the
Right.
first place, right? And so we started with trust building between the new exec and the volunteers, setting up one-on-ones to start building relationships. And honestly, several of the volunteers just never responded to those requests for one-on-ones. Um, and and they were just written
Yeah.
off,
Yeah.
really.
They were
Yeah.
done.
Yep, they knew they were done. We knew they were done. We just were like, okay, cutting our losses. But those who were interested in continuing their involvement, we worked on developing some genuine relationships through listening, through being curious, through really understanding what brought them to this board, what kind of experience they wanted to get out of it, what they wanted to contribute to help the organization move forward. So we did all of that individual work for a few months. This was like a 3 or 4 month process. And then as a group, I facilitated a conversation leading through the challenges and the frustrations that they'd been experiencing and creating that vision, kind of like we talked about earlier, for how they wanted to exist. What kind of
Mhm.
a culture did they want? Because some organizations could and should have really serious cultures. Some should be maybe more playful because they,
Mhm.
promote fun,
Right.
creative exploration. And so we were really intentional about what they wanted it to feel like, look like. And then they were able to work on creating their ideal board profile.
Mm.
So who are the right people for this board? And then we established expectations. And then really it took over the course of about a full year to go from that original list of 11 people who were just names on a piece of paper, pared it down to about 5 core people who were willing to do this work to rebuild and recruit and be intentional. And then with clear vision, clear expectations, a plan for recruiting and deepening relationships, we were able to build that board back up to their full 15, as required by their bylaws, 15 board members who were all engaged and all passionate volunteers working towards a common vision. And when we got to that point, the exec was like so relieved because she'd come into a situation that was super stressful, the board side and the operations side, and now she had a team helping her lead her organization.
Yes, that's a great success story. People, I want you to hear what Kim said. She said listening tours, then some group facilitation, and it takes about a year or more to get it done. You're going to have to let some people go. It is okay. If they stop responding to emails, you just say, okay. You try to set up an in-person meeting. They don't want it. You say, okay. It went from 11 to 5. Hear what she is saying. She laid out a clear map for you. You are not alone. This happens. There are people out there like Kim and myself who can help you navigate through that situation. You are not alone. That's what I want people to understand and know. Kim, 30 some years of experience. I got 28, Kim. I'm right there, nipping at your heels. But there's people who can help you with this. And you just need to be aware of that and you need to ask for the help. So you can see this here. I'm preaching because here's why. And we revisited this, but I'm coming back to it. It's self-awareness. A lot of times people are not, one is they're not self-aware and what's causing the problem. And two, I am always surprised, Kim, and I don't know about you, how unaware our industry is that there are people like you and I and others who can help them in this journey, particularly in creating teams and looking at toxic leadership behaviors and how to cultivate leaders, all of that. And so what role does this question says, what role does self-awareness play? But you have already answered that before. But what role does just people being unaware that we are here to help? How have you found that in your work with different clients?
Yeah. Well, and I do want to address the self-awareness piece too. I think that in my opinion, self-awareness is the foundation of all emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Without it, we can't self-regulate, we can't self-motivate, we can't develop healthy interpersonal relationships, we can't hold empathy for others or help others grow. And so when you don't have that, you don't have that realization that, oh, I don't have to have all the answers. I can ask for help. I can look to others for help. Sometimes we take ourselves too seriously and we are not self-confident enough to say, I don't have all the answers. I would like someone else to come in and help me with that.
Yeah.
So I think that self-awareness that you don't have to have all the answers. I mean, nobody in the world knows everything and nobody's the best leader in the whole wide world. We all bring different strengths and gifts and talents to the table. And being able to say, yep, I'm really great at this, but you know what? I need some help with this piece of it is just amazing self-awareness. And it shows, like going back to this, it shows that vulnerability that I'm a real person and I get that you all are real people too. And I had this conversation with my son when he was younger. I was like, being vulnerable is such a strength. It shows that you are confident enough to say, yeah, I don't know how to do this.
Right.
Come help me. But you know what? I can help you with something too, because I'm really good at other things.
Yeah.
So that's such a really interesting conversation or question to dig into. But I think you're right. Self-awareness of what you're good at and what you're not is key to being able to ask for help. Really.
Yeah. And sorry, I kind of derailed it, but it just, I just want people to know that if they are experiencing something that they can't deal with or don't know how, just like you said, there are people that can help them. But you are right. You have to be vulnerable enough to say, I need help, right? And so thank you for sharing that and redirecting that. So if you are a nonprofit leader and you suspect there's toxicity, but you aren't sure where to start, what's the first step that you recommend that they take?
Yeah. Well, back to the last question that you asked, um, sometimes having outside eyes come in and take a look at what's going on can be the best first step that helps eliminate those blind spots that we might have about ourselves. And sometimes we're just too close to the situation to be able to see what's really going on. So bringing in someone who can provide an objective evaluation of the situation, who can provide guidance to speed up the transition, because yeah, you could probably work on this and you could probably transition from a toxic board to a healthy one. But how long is it going to take if you're trying to do this yourself? It might take years. You might lose a lot of people over the course of that time. When your board sees that you're bringing someone in, that you're serious about fixing this problem, and that you're getting the support needed to help get from point A to point whatever down the road it might be, Z,
Mhm.
they're going to be more willing to stick with you, to work through the yucky, uncomfortable, hard parts. And again, those outside eyes can see things that we can't when we're really close to that
Yeah,
situation.
that makes total sense to me. So here we go. One of the most common questions I get is, Sabrina, can you help me with engaging my board in fundraising? And the answer is yes. The next step is for you to visit my website at www.buildingbetterboards.com to check out my services. If you're watching this on rebroadcast, post your questions in the comments. And I say we because Kim will get these questions too, will get back to you, right? So that is what we have. And now, what I want to do is, Kim, I want you to be able to tell people how they can contact you.
Yes, thank you. So my email is the best way to reach me. I am a slave to it, which isn't a great
I
thing, but that's
know,
where I'm
me
at.
too.
So it is Kim, just Kim, at athena-coco.com. So that's ATHENA, a little dash, COCO.com. And that's the best way to reach me. I also answer my phone and my text, which are 515, I'm in Iowa, 249 9457.
So y'all see why I like Kim, right? She shares her email and her cell phone, much like myself. But don't take advantage. Don't take advantage. I tell people, leave a voicemail. I'll call you back, but don't take advantage. We are a given people because we sat in that CEO seat, right, Kim? And we
Mhm.
know. And sometimes you just need to have a quick conversation, and we want to help, but don't take advantage. Okay.
Mhm.
So I want to thank you so much, Kim, for being my guest today. And I again will drop your contact email, not your cell phone, but I will drop your contact email in the comments and on all the threads so that people can email you. I want to offer you this. I want to offer you the opportunity to say any final words.
Oh gosh, thank you. I said it earlier, but I just think it's so important for nonprofit leaders to look at their board of directors as their support team. They're not there necessarily to do all the work, maybe sometimes in those younger days, those early days, but they can bring so much to the table. And so I encourage taking this piece of leading a nonprofit super seriously, and know, kind of like Sabrina says, know that there are people out here who can help, because nobody's born knowing how to lead a great board, or even be on a great board, or be a great board member. So reach out. There's lots of resources, and we all want you to be successful because y'all are working to make our world a better place, and we thank you for that.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's Sipping Tea with Sabrina. I will see you next time. Bye bye, y'all.